Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in description below. Today we have breaking news coming from around the world, as news has emerged from inside the Russian Federation at the Yasny testing range that a brand new UR-100N carrying an Avangard hypersonic missile has catastrophically failed today and exploded only several hundred meters from the pad after it appears to have suffered a critical failure in the midst of its launch. Meanwhile, in the Black Sea, two Russian shadow tankers have spontaneously exploded due to unforeseen circumstances that the Russian Federation has described as external at the best, that have led to the fires on board both of the vessels brewing and burning so hot that the crews have now had to abandon ship and the vessels are practically adrift at sea and awaiting to sink after their structural integrity will be threatened by the fire. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation is continuing to put more pressure on the United States and Ukraine in a negotiating position by claiming that the Zelensky government is illegitimate and that they would not allow the Zelensky government or President Volodymyr Zelensky to sign any peace deal with the Russian Federation's government, making it incredibly clear that there is no way to end the war because Zelensky's government will not be removed from power due to the constitutional limitations inside of Ukraine. The United States of America is not dealing with an absolutely easy time on other fronts as well, as the People's Republic of China is now putting more pressure on the United States of America to remove its sanctions that it imposed against Venezuela recently and to also try and find a diplomatic solution to the issue. The United States of America seems to have listened to that in a limited extent for some reason, as there is going to be a possible meeting between Nicolas Maduro and the President of the United States here within the next week or two, or the next 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the U.S. has also installed a radar system at Trinidad and Tobago as it continues to entrench its position within the area of the Eastern Caribbean. Meanwhile, back towards the Ukrainian home front, the Polish Republic has now provided $100 million in arms to Ukraine today, in an announcement made by the Polish government. This comes as the Ukrainian government is being stirred up, at least internally, as Andriy Yermak has resigned and has also been dismissed by decree from President Volodymyr Zelensky for alleged claims of corruption and acts of corruption that were conducted while he was the chief of staff as well as the head negotiator for the state of Ukraine. At the moment, it does appear that there is an ongoing investigation by the Ukrainian anti-corruption bodies inside the state against Andriy Yermak for a possible case against him. Outside of that, the Ukrainian armed forces have also hit heavily the Beriev aircraft manufacturing plant within the area of Taganrog, while at the same time, several substations were hit and exploded inside of Belgorod, once again plunging the city into a blackout at that point. We have a lot of news to cover once again, and we're going to be making sure to get through each and every single piece of this news, starting with our largest stories first and working our way on into the smaller ones throughout the course of this video. Moving us on into our largest and most important bit of news from this video, we are going to be moving ourselves into the area of the Orenburg Oblast, and specifically towards the area of the Yasny testing range. The Yasny testing range is a smaller complex within the eastern area of the Orenburg Oblast. This testing facility lies just to the very south of the end, or the foothills more so, of the Ural Mountains within the region. This testing facility is somewhat important as the 13th Guards Missile Regiment, which operates the UR-100Ns and UR-100N UTTHs, which are equipped with the Avangard Hypersonic Glide Vehicle system, use this testing range to be able to conduct launches of the UR-100N system, also known as the SS-18 or the SS-19 ICBM system here within the Western world, or at least by its reporting name. The Russian Federation has attempted to launch one of these, and I'll actually show you all at least a general design of the UR-100Ns, or the SS-19 Stilettos, as they're called by their NATO designation, that were conducted in a test launch today. The ICBMs themselves are not entirely new. The first versions of the SS-19s, or the UR-100Ns, whichever you would prefer to call them, were actually being put into service around 1975. However, with the Russian Federation being tight on funds and wanting to make sure that they're taken seriously in the world because everyone would take them as a joke otherwise, they try and modernize the UR-100Ns into a more advanced and deadly sort of a platform. At least as much as they can. And it doesn't really seem to have gone too well. And this brings us into the Avangard Hypersonic Glide Vehicle system. The Avangard Hypersonic Glide Vehicle system is a MIRV that is capable of hypersonic re-entry. Now, something that's a little bit interesting about this, and I don't really know if the Russians are just misunderstanding what a hypersonic glide vehicle is, or anything along those lines, but every single warhead from a MIRV, from a multiple independent re-entry vehicle, is almost always hypersonic. When they're about to hit their target, they're still going about Mach 8 or Mach 10, so it's not really like they're short on speed, so I don't really know what the point of the Avangard is, but the Russians claim that the Avangard allows for the independent warheads, once they're released from the MIRV, to travel at a far higher speed to their target, and making it a lot more difficult to be able to intercept them. Once again, just want to make this clear, it's practically impossible in the modern day and age, outside of the one air defense system that we have within the United States, the GMD, to be able to intercept or destroy any independent warhead, or even an ICBM for that matter. So the Avangard is largely overkill, but still the Russians put a lot of time and effort into trying to make sure that this system is taken seriously, including what was done today by none other than the 13th Red Banner Rocket Division in Yasny, which is the one in charge of operating these missiles. At the Yasny testing range, they attempted to launch the Avangard system on board a UR-100N, and it ended in an absolute catastrophic failure. We actually have two clips of this, one clip showing from the catastrophic failure onwards, and the first one, which we're going to be showing here, showing the actual launch and then subsequent failure of the Avangard system, as well as the UR-100N. There is the launch of the missile, and we can already see that the missile has taken more so of an airplane-like flight off of the ground, as it is at an incredibly shallow angle, very low to the ground, generally not considered a good thing for most missiles. We now see the missile attempting to correct itself, and now overcorrecting, and flying back towards the pad. It's now flipping around in the air. And it appears that the rocket motors and heat, and due to the fact that the missile is now upside down, has started to combust the engines themselves and possibly lead to catastrophic explosions. It now appears that some sort of a remote ejection has been made of the Avangard system, so that way it's not a part of the giant fireball that is to come. And then the solid, well, more so the first stage of the missile in a solid giant piece is now hurtling to the ground in a fireball. It appears that the Avangard itself is falling to the ground over here to the right, and then the missile itself hits and explodes in a giant fireball.
Ебать. Бля, держите меня, я снимаю. Да ну нахуй, бля.
Что, упало? Да. Упало.
Бах.
Машину, защиту!
It doesn't look like it turned out to be a successful test. And once again, for the Russian Federation, which has suffered an endless amount of failures on their nuclear testing fields throughout the entirety of the war in Ukraine, this is another embarrassment for the Russian Federation and the Russian state as a whole. From what we were able to hear, at least from the aftermath, the smoke cloud that was rising was obviously toxic. You can look at that and easily tell that it's toxic. Nevertheless, it's a cloud of violet-colored smoke that is toxic, filled with multiple different kinds of materials and chemicals that were used inside of the propellant of the missile that is rising in the air around the test site. Apparently, we've also been able to hear afterwards that the Russian Federation is apparently dealing with a very large fire that's basically encompassing the entirety of the Yasny testing range. That right there is a little sliver of the Yasny testing range I was just showing y'all a moment ago, and this giant red block here is what the firm satellite from NASA confirms to be the area that's on fire. So basically, the entire plain around the Yasny testing range is now on fire at the moment. It's not an incredibly good look for the Russian Federation to have another ICBM failure like that in their tests. The United States of America has conducted multiple ICBM tests throughout the years, and the amount of failures that we've had have been wildly small compared to the number of launches and tests attempted. The Russian Federation right now is running on average more than a 50-50 chance of failure, with the larger majority chance being a critical failure more so than a success, with practically all of their missile tests. The only one that we've heard of recently that has succeeded was the Beriev nuclear-powered cruise missile, but the Russian Federation has provided absolutely no proof in video and picture evidence to actually show that that launch or test was ever conducted at all. So we do not even know if that was even a real test. It may have more so just been a propaganda claim with absolutely nothing to verify or prove if it actually happened or not. Still, the Russian Federation, it's continuing while it's clearly running out of money to keep the war in Ukraine going, it's about to have to bail out the railroads. Almost every single Russian company has referred to a 3-day work week. Large amounts of Russians are unemployed because layoffs have been happening over the past few months that have pretty much halved companies in terms of their employment. And on top of that, the Russian nuclear arsenal is clearly derelict and quite underfunded due to the amount of critical failures that they're facing, or generally the incompetence of the military is what's producing these failures, one or the other. The Russian Federation is still wanting to play ball, at least the best way that they can. They are now claiming, according to Dmitry Medvedev, that the corrupt government surrounding the expired Kiev clown has crumbled. He may still be sitting in his office, spewing cocaine from his nose, but he won't be the one who signs the peace treaty. The buffoon is illegitimate. The collapse of his system is inevitable. I guess when the Russians lose another guy to another anti-corruption scandal, I guess that's nothing to the Russians. I guess that's just another day. But at the same time, Medvedev is making it quite clear, as we generally assume that he is a minor spokesperson of Putin, and whatever he says is approved by Putin, to generally show his true feelings without him being the one to say it. Basically, Medvedev is Putin's anger translator, if you want to put it that way. Medvedev is making it quite clear that they're still not going to recognize the legitimacy of the Ukrainian government in any peace negotiations, meaning that the Ukrainian government can't even talk to the Russians to end the war ever, in any form, because the Russians consider them to be an illegitimate government. So, this is once again putting quite a damper on any sort of an attempted peace talk with the Russian Federation, because you can't have a peace talk with a country that isn't even willing to talk to the other country and treat them like a legitimate country to end the war. So the Ukrainians resorted to what they know best, which is just obliterating the Russians, at least where it counts. Down in the Black Sea today, near to the coast of Turkey, a report came out on a situation that was involving what appeared to be a tanker at the time. It later turned into two. Today, according to RIA Novosti, a tanker caught fire in the Black Sea off the coast of Turkey due to external influences, aka the Ukrainians blew it up. The Turkish Maritime Authority reported on Friday that the crew is being evacuated. A report was received that a fire broke out due to external influence on the tanker Kairos, which was en route to Novorossiysk without cargo, 28 miles off the coast of Turkey. The condition of 25 crew members is normal, the department reported in a press release. The tanker under the Gambian flag is currently in the Black Sea. Rescuers have been dispatched to the vessel to evacuate the crew, the department noted. We also were able to then hear that it wasn't just one ship, it was actually two. Two Russian tankers had exploded due to quote-unquote external circumstances within the area. The first picture here is showing the Kairos, which appears to be absolutely enveloped in fire down to the waterline, with a large gaping hole, assumed to be here, allowing for a massive part of the fireball to fend directly off of the waterline and off of the port side of the vessel. Additionally, we were also able to see the Virat, or the Virat here, whichever way you want to call it, also on fire as well, although we couldn't really get close enough to the vessel in this picture to tell exactly what kind of fire it was, what side of the vessel it was on, and what area of the vessel it was in, whether it was towards the fore, amidships, or aft part of the vessel. It was a little bit unclear at the moment exactly where the fire had broken out in the Virat, but nevertheless, both of the crews have been evacuated, and the vessels are currently adrift at sea, engulfed in an inferno, and will soon be sinking. These sorts of fires are very hard to recover a ship from, and many people will wonder, well, why in the world would a ship sink when it's made out of steel just from a fire? Wouldn't steel be able to survive a fire? Well, not necessarily, actually. The heat from these sorts of fires can actually start to warp the bulkheads of the vessel, and can also lead to the buckling of the welds that hold the ship together. This can allow for the egress of water into the vessel, and the catastrophic loss of the vessel in the end due to sinking, due to the structural integrity of the vessel being compromised. So both of these vessels are practically lost effective at this moment, since the crew has now abandoned the ships, and it appears that the fires are raging wildly out of control. We also have another picture of the fire from here. This is another image of the Virat on fire, very similar to the last one, but wanted to make sure to include it just because we wanted to have as much evidence as possible of the ongoing fires. Nevertheless, it does appear that both vessels involved were what is believed or alleged to be Russian shadow tankers. Shadow tankers conduct their operations under the flags of different countries. For example, if we were to say that the Kairos is an alleged shadow tanker, they would be operating under the flag of Gambia, while the Virat would also be operating under an unknown flag, at least at the moment. Still, it is understood that both of these vessels, according to claims, are a part of the Russian shadow tanker fleet, and both of their explosions within the area of Turkey are once again quite mysterious, and a lot of people are wondering how in the world did that happen? Well, I can tell you a general theory as to why that would happen. The Ukrainians are highly likely the ones behind these explosions, especially if they were conducted within the international waters of the Black Sea. The state of Ukraine understands that the Russian Federation's ability, by any measure, to get their products out to the open market and to be able to sell their oil and natural gas to the greater world helps them to make money. So what the Ukrainians are trying to do in multiple ways is create an effective blockade of Russian oil from making it into the greater world. Phase 1 of that plan was to attack the Russian oil refineries and gas plants themselves and try and knock those offline to the point that they were generally in a humongous deficit, to the point if they produce any oil and natural gas, it's going straight to the Russian public instead of being exported around the world. Phase 2 of what we've seen of the Ukrainian plan to blockade the Russians' oil has been to directly attack the ports themselves that ship the oil into the greater world. Russia has 4 of these on their western coast, 2 of them down here in the southern part of the country, Novorossiysk and Tuapse, and then further on up in the north they have Ust-Luga and also Primorsk. Out of the 4 of these, they have hit 3 of these ports, except for Ust-Luga, leaving Ust-Luga as the only fully operational oil loading port within the entire area, which is once again significantly reducing the amount of output that they can put into the world to sell, and it has reduced that, crazily enough, by 35% within a single month. Now, the third phase of the plan appears to be that if the Ukrainians get the opportunity or the chance, they are going to start obliterating Russian ships at sea or Russian shadow tankers that are attempting to carry Russian oil, so that way, even if the oil refineries were operational, and even if the ports were operational, which none of them are, the ships aren't operational to even pick up or carry a load of oil because they've been sunk somewhere within the Black Sea. So generally that appears to be the new Ukrainian plan at the moment. They are attempting to have a triple redundancy to their attempt to blockade Russian oil and to generally bankrupt the Russian government at large. Still, while all this has been going on over here in Eastern Europe, it appears that in the United States of America, the U.S. is dealing with a slightly similar situation, at least in terms of international diplomatic pressure, to the ongoing situation in Venezuela, as the United States of America is now once again dealing with the Chinese, which are openly throwing a bone towards the Venezuelans. China has urged the U.S. to remove unilateral sanctions on Venezuela. That was according to a statement today by the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning, pictured here. The People's Republic of China has been openly getting involved in supporting the Republic of Venezuela against the United States of America and its attempted actions against Maduro for his supposed and alleged narco-terrorist activities. It also appears that the People's Republic of China is trying to get involved in possibly supplying and equipping Venezuela with arms and equipment in the future. But once again, folks, I do have to point out that the situation with Venezuela has changed quite significantly. At the beginning, when we picked a fight with Venezuela, nobody was involved, and it was just the U.S. and Venezuela, which made it a pretty open and shut situation. It was something that we could walk away from and deal with later. Now, at this moment, the Russian Federation has clearly, with proof, provided arms to Venezuela, even by their own statements, and the People's Republic of China is making it incredibly clear, at least diplomatically, that they have some sort of an invested stake in Venezuela, which clearly shows that Venezuela is Russian and Chinese aligned, and also just south of the United States by about 1,000 miles. That is quite concerning, and it does create a situation where the United States now has to respond. If we walk away now, not only is Russia going to continue to arm Venezuela, but China is going to continue to financially grow out Venezuela's economy and also equip Venezuela's armed forces as well, and possibly even train them to a much more modern and advanced standard than they're at right now. That would make the situation with Venezuela far more difficult to deal with in the future, and then we may see that Venezuela ends up being a permanent fortress of Chinese and Russian influence within the Americas well on into the future. Outside of that, we also were able to hear in Washington, D.C. that there's now a supposed talk that will be happening between the President of the United States and Nicolas Maduro at some point within the next week or two. We're not exactly sure when, and it doesn't really seem as though anyone knows exactly what they're going to be talking about. Once again, it's been made wildly clear by the Maduro government that they really don't want to talk to the United States. They just don't want the U.S. to bomb them. And the United States also doesn't want to talk to Venezuela, and they want Maduro out. So I have no clue what in the world they would even be talking about, because it does appear that we're at an impasse, but a talk will be